You didn't mean to explain that much. You could feel it halfway through, that small tightening in your chest. The moment you realized you were still talking, still adding context, still clarifying something that probably didn't need it. And even now, hours later, you're replaying it, wondering if you sounded strange or defensive, or like you were trying too hard to be understood. You tell yourself it's fine, but your mind doesn't believe you yet. You've always done this thing where one sentence never feels safe on its own. So you add another and another. Just in case they misunderstand your tone, just in case they read something into it that wasn't there, just in case silence turns into judgment. You don't over-explain because you love talking. You do it because being misunderstood feels unbearable. There's this quiet fear that if you don't explain everything perfectly, something will be lost. And once it's lost, you won't get it back. So you explain your intentions, your emotions, your reasoning, your backstory. You explain before anyone even asks. And when you finally stop talking, there's no relief, only the echo. Did I say too much? Did I make it worse? Did I sound guilty? Did they notice my voice change? Your mind scrolls back like it's searching for evidence. At night, this gets louder because there's no one interrupting the loop. You replay conversations the way some people replay songs. The same parts. Again and again. You imagine different versions, shorter replies, cooler replies, replies where you didn't explain so much. And you cringe a little, not because what you said was wrong, but because it revealed how much you care. You learned early that being clear didn't always protect you. Sometimes it made you feel exposed. So now you try to control the outcome with words, with details, with precision. You think if you explain enough, no one can twist it. No one can leave confused. No one can assume the worst. But deep down, you're not trying to be clear. You're trying to be safe. You notice it most when you're anxious. Your sentences get longer. Your messages get heavier. You reread them before sending, then reread them again. You add one more line just to clarify. You tell yourself it's the last edit. It rarely is. And when you finally send it, you don't relax. You wait. You watch for typing bubbles, read receipts, timestamps. Every minute without a response feels like proof of something you can't quite name. Maybe they're annoyed. Maybe you overwhelmed them. Maybe you shouldn't have explained at all. Your mind fills the silence with stories. You don't like silence, not because it's empty, but because it's ambiguous. Silence gives your thoughts too much room. So you fill space with explanations, with context, with reassurance you hope they feel. But there's another layer you don't always notice. Sometimes you over-explain because you don't trust your own feelings to be enough. You don't say I was hurt. You say why you were hurt and why it makes sense and why you're not blaming anyone and why you're not dramatic. You soften everything, wrap it in logic. You're afraid that raw emotion alone won't be accepted. So you translate it into something reasonable, something defendable, something that can't be dismissed, and it's exhausting. You feel it in your body, that heaviness after conversations, that mental fatigue that lingers even when the moment is over. You think about how other people seem to speak, simply, how they say one sentence and move on. You wonder how they do that. You wonder what it would feel like to stop mid-explanation and just let it be. But letting it be feels risky, because what if they misunderstand you? And what if they don't ask for clarification? And what if they walk away with the wrong version of you? So you try to manage the narrative. You explain not because you don't trust them, but because you don't trust the space between words. There's this constant background awareness that things can go wrong, that people can misread. You think ahead, too far ahead. You imagine future misunderstandings before they exist, so you prevent them. Or at least you try. And when it doesn't work, you blame yourself for not explaining better. You lie awake thinking about things you said days ago, weeks ago, moments that no one else remembers. You remember the exact tone, the pause, The way you added that extra sentence, you wish you could reach back in time and say less, or say it differently. But there's also a quiet sadness underneath all of this, because you want to be understood deeply, without having to translate yourself into paragraphs. You want someone to hear one sentence and feel the meaning behind it. You want rest. And you don't talk about this part much, how lonely it feels to always be explaining, to always be clarifying who you are, what you meant, what you didn't mean. It's like standing slightly off-center in every interaction. Not wrong, just not settled. And maybe you've wondered, late at night, if the real reason you over-explain is because you learned that being quiet didn't keep you safe, that silence once meant being misunderstood, or ignored, or blamed. So you adapted, you became articulate, thoughtful, careful. You learned how to speak in full paragraphs, and it worked, sometimes. But it also trained your mind to never stop monitoring, even now. Listening to this, you might be thinking, yes, that's exactly it. And also wondering why it feels so heavy to be seen like this. That exposure, that gentle discomfort. Because part of you has always believed that if people saw how much you think, they might pull away. So you hide it behind explanations that sound calm and reasonable. You present a polished version of your thoughts. But inside, it's noisy, it's late. Your room is quiet, your phone screen is dim. And for once, you're not explaining anything. You're just listening, and maybe you can feel it. That subtle peace. The feeling of not having to justify your inner world, just being here. As you are. You don't need to finish the thought tonight. You don't need the perfect wording. Some things don't need to be clarified to exist. And you can sit with that just for this moment. Because the moment you stop explaining, something else shows up. A strange quiet. Not peaceful. Just unfamiliar. Your mind doesn't rush to fill it right away. It hesitates. Like it's waiting for permission. You notice how often your thoughts lean forward, always anticipating, always preparing the next sentence. Even alone, you rehearse. You imagine questions no one has asked yet. You answer them anyway. You explain yourself to people who aren't even there. Sometimes it's an old conversation. Sometimes it's one that hasn't happened. Sometimes it's a version of someone who might misunderstand you someday. Your mind keeps you busy, not because it enjoys it, but because it's afraid of what happens if it stops. If you don't explain, then what? If you don't clarify, then who are you left as? There's a vulnerability in being brief, in letting a sentence stand without armor. You felt it before, that tiny spike of fear after saying less than usual. The urge to rush back in and add more, just in case. Because you know what it's like when people assume, when they fill in the blanks incorrectly, when you wish you had spoken up sooner. So now you overcorrect, you don't trust the blanks anymore. You don't like how much power other people's interpretations have over you. So you try to remove uncertainty entirely. But the truth is, no amount of explaining ever fully removes it. There's always a gap between what you mean and what someone hears. And you feel responsible for that gap. You carry it with you like it's your job to manage how you're perceived. You think about how exhausting that is. But you don't stop. Because stopping feels like letting go of control. And control feels like safety, even when it costs you sleep. You lie in bed and replay moments where you explain too much, and moments where you didn't explain enough. Both feel equally uncomfortable. Your mind asks, which one made you look worse? It keeps score. Sometimes you imagine a version of yourself who speaks simply, who doesn't flinch after every sentence, who doesn't need to justify every feeling. You admire that version and resent them a little too, because it seems effortless. And effort is what you're tired of. You don't talk about how much energy it takes to sound calm, to sound reasonable, to sound okay, how carefully you choose your words so no one thinks you're too much, too emotional, too intense, too sensitive. So you smooth everything out. You turn feelings into explanations, reactions into reasoning. You say, I just wanted to clarify, when what you really mean is, I hope you don't leave. You say, I might be overthinking, when what you really mean is, please don't judge me for caring this deeply. And you hate how transparent that feels once you notice it, because you're not weak. You're observant. You're aware. Your mind catches details others miss. Tone shifts, pauses, energy changes. You notice them instantly. And once you notice, you can't unnotice. So you respond with explanations, with caution. You adapt faster than most people realize. And that adaptation became a habit. Now it shows up everywhere. In texts that turn into paragraphs. In conversations where you circle back just to be clear. In apologies you offer even when you didn't do anything wrong. You don't want conflict. But more than that, you don't want confusion. Because confusion feels like danger. There's a memory buried somewhere. You don't have to name it. A moment where being misunderstood hurt more than it should have. And your nervous system remembers. So now, clarity feels like survival. But survival mode is loud. It never rests. It keeps you alert long after the conversation is over. You feel it when your shoulders don't drop, when your jaw stays tight, when your thoughts keep racing even in silence. You think rest will come once everything is explained. But everything is never fully explained. There's always one more angle, one more possibility. Your mind is thorough. And only. Because explaining is a one-way effort sometimes. You give context, you give meaning, you give care, and you're not always met with the same depth. Some people don't need explanations, they just assume and move on. That hurts in a quiet way. It makes you feel like you're speaking a language no one else is fluent in. So you keep translating, even when no one asks for the translation. And here's the part that's hard to admit. Sometimes you wish someone would stop you mid-sentence, not to cut you off, but to say, I get it, you don't need to explain. You crave that kind of understanding. The kind that doesn't require effort, the kind that doesn't make you prove your intentions. You want to feel held by someone's attention, not analyzed by it. And maybe that's why you're listening to this right now. Because for once, you're not being asked to clarify. You're not being misunderstood. You're just being noticed, and it's uncomfortable and relieving. At the same time, you can feel how tired you are, not physically. Mentally, tired of carrying every interaction with you, tired of replaying, tired of editing your own existence. You wonder what would happen if you explained less. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just a little. If you let a sentence end where it naturally wants to, if you trusted that the right people would feel the meaning without footnotes, that thought feels scary, but also light. Like setting something down you didn't realize you were holding. You don't have to decide anything tonight. You don't have to change. This isn't about fixing you. There's nothing broken here. This is just noticing. Noticing how much care lives inside you. How much awareness. How much desire to be understood. And how that desire learned to speak in explanations. You can honor that without letting it run you completely for now. Just stay here. No clarifying, no justifying. Just breathing. Let the silence exist without filling it. Let the thought trail off without finishing it. You don't need to be perfectly understood in this moment to be real. You're already here, and that's enough.